Elena, Nathan finally said, and I knew the tone. It was the tone he used for vendors, for contractors, for the kind of conversation where the outcome was already decided, and I was just supposed to nod. I turned. He held out a folded piece of paper. I took it, opened it. Bus ticket, charter coach to a regional airport 3 hours away, then a budget airline with a connection in Dubai that added 12 extra hours to the trip. The kind of route you gave interns who'd messed up the coffee order. Budget's tight, Nathan said, and he said it like he was sharing a burden with me. We're already over by $17,000 on the hotel deposits. Maya and Paige need to be fresh when we land. That meeting with Synergy Innovations is day 2, and if Maya's not performing at full capacity, we're losing a 6-figure contract. I looked at the bus ticket, AT the crinkled edge where he'd folded it too hard. At the small coffee stain in the corner that looked like he'd set his mug down on it while he was making other arrangements. You're putting me on a bus. Emina. His voice went lower, the way it did when he needed me to understand that this wasn't a negotiation. You're the owner's wife. You understand how this looks. We're not playing favorites. If anything, I need people to see you rolling up your sleeves that IT builds morale. It's a leadership play. Leadership play. I tested the words in my head, let them settle. What about the employees? I asked. The ops team is on economy. The junior developers are on the same routing. I know, and it's not ideal. But, not ideal. I said it flat. Nathan's jaw tightened. It was a small sign, invisible to anyone else. But I'd watched that jaw for 11 years. I knew what it meant. I was interrupting a script. Elena, I don't have time for this right now. Maya has a specialist appointment in Singapore on the way back. She's already rearranged her whole schedule for this trip, and if she's not at 100%. Maya has a back condition. Yes. He said it like I'd finally caught on, and I'm not putting her in economy for 12 hours when she's... Maya has a back condition that somehow only appears when there's a seat upgrade available, I said. She had a back condition when we flew to Chicago. She had a back condition when we went to Seattle. She didn't have a back condition when she carried boxes at the conference in Denver, but she has a back condition now. Nathan stared at me. Behind him, Maya had turned. She was a study in subtle optics. The careful tilt of her head, the way she'd positioned herself with the light hitting her face, the small adjustment of her posture to show that she was listening but trying not to look like she was listening. She had worn a silk blouse and loose slacks, casual but expensive. She knew the difference between conference room dressing and airport dressing. I don't know what you're implying, Nathan said, but I'm not having this conversation at the gate. I'm not implying anything. I folded the bus ticket along its original creases, neat and precise. I'm just asking, is there another option? There's no more money. Then take the bus with me. He laughed, a short, surprised noise that came out wrong. What? If budget is the issue, if it's a leadership play, then you and I take the bus together. Maya can have the seat. She needs it. But if the team sees their CEO on the same budget route as their admin staff, that builds morale. That's a play. Elena, he was shaking his head, already dismissing it. I can't take the bus. I have calls. I have a whole list of stakeholders who need to be updated on the Synergy deal. I can't be offline for... You can take calls on the bus. I need to send documents. You can send documents on the bus. I need... He stopped, adjusted, recalibrated. Look, I'm not arguing with you. I've already made the decision. You take the bus, you fly economy. You arrive a day later, it's fine. You're not doing anything during the first 2 days except, I don't know, relaxing by the pool. I looked at Maya. She'd moved closer, not quite joining the conversation, but positioned where she could hear. Her face was the picture of apologetic helplessness. IT was a practiced expression. I'd cataloged it over 2 years of watching her calibrate Nathan's attention. Elena. Maya's voice was soft. I feel terrible about this. Truly did if there was any way I could, but Dr. Patterson said the flight could aggravate the injury, and then I'd be useless for the whole trip, and Nathan's depending on me, and... She touched her lower back. I'm so sorry, I really am. She didn't sound sorry. She sounded like someone reading lines. You're right, I said. The meeting is important. Nathan exhaled. Thank you. I knew you'd understand. I'll take the bus. I kept my voice even. I kept my hands steady. I had learned to keep everything steady over the last few years, because the alternative was screaming, and screaming never changed anything. Nathan nodded, already turning away. Good. Maya, let's go. I want to clear security before. Wait. I hadn't meant to say it. It just came out. They both turned. I looked at Nathan, AT the slight tension in his shoulders, the way he was already casting glances toward the premium check-in lane, already orienting himself toward a future that didn't include me. I looked at Maya, who had positioned herself half a step closer to him than was strictly natural, a detail so small it would look accidental to anyone watching. How long have you been sleeping with her? The question hung in the air. Maya's face didn't change. She'd had practice, I could tell, but there was something around her eyes, a flicker of calculation, not shock. She was figuring out her next move. Nathan went still. Excuse me? Not her, I said. Not specifically her. I waved a hand, dismissing my own mistake. Forget I said that. It was just a thought. I don't know what you're... 11 years. I said it to myself. Really. 11 years, and you'd rather put me on a bus than pay $300 extra. It's not $300. It's not about the money at all, is it? Nathan's face was carefully blank. He had that look, the one he'd perfected in board meetings when someone was asking a question he didn't want to answer, and he was buying time. I'd seen him deploy it on bankers, on partners, on the group of investors who'd come to look at the books last quarter. Elena, I don't know what's going on with you, but... I'm not asking you to do anything, I said. I'm just observing. I pocketed the bus ticket, turned, and walked toward the family restroom at the end of the concourse. I didn't look back. I didn't speed up or slow down. I just walked. The bathroom was clean, which was something. I locked the door, leaned against the sink, and pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over the recent calls. I scrolled past Nathan's name, past Maya's, past the group chat with operations that I'd been removed from 3 weeks ago. A different number, one that had been in my contacts for 15 years, but that I'd rarely used in the last decade. I dialed. One ring. Ms. Martinez. The voice on the other end was calm, professional. Chester Lee had been my family's general counsel since before I was born. He'd handled the estate, the trusts, the careful architecture that kept Wozars separate from what Nathan had built. I had a policy. I don't call Chester unless something's broken. Chester, I'm at the airport. I'm a wit. The property team flagged the corporate card when it was used at the premium check-in desk. Of course they did, and my grandmother had built that system. IT was elegant, invisible, relentless. Every transaction over a certain threshold triggered a review. Every card tied to the family's accounts was monitored, not for fraud, but for pattern for signs. What card was used for the first-class seats? Chester paused. It was a meaningful pause. Ms. Martinez, the first-class seats were charged to the joint account, the business account you co-signed with Mr. Whitmore, not the family account. Am I on the business account? You're the primary signatory. Then why wasn't I consulted? Chester was quiet for a moment. I could picture him in his office downtown, the one with the floor-to-ceiling windows and a custom desk that had been my father's. He was probably adjusting his glasses the way he did when he was deciding how honest to be. Mr. Whitmore designated Ms. Chun as an authorized user on the corporate card 3 months ago, he said carefully. I flagged it for review, but you declined to authorize an investigation. I'd been in New York that week, helping my mother clean out my grandmother's apartment after the funeral. I had signed things without reading them. Revoke her authorization. Consider it done. Anything else? I stared at my reflection. The fluorescent lighting was unkind. I looked tired, the kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. Can I have my private plane at the private terminal in 40 minutes? Chester's response was immediate. The Gulfstream is already at Van Nuys. I'll clear the flight plan and have the car waiting at the TSA checkpoint. Mr. Whitmore won't see you leave. You anticipated this. I anticipated the possibility, Chester said smoothly. When the first-class seats were booked for Ms. Chun and Mr. Whitmore didn't include you, I updated the asset memo. My father would have approved. He'd always said that Chester was the only person in the world who thought 2 steps ahead of everyone else. One more thing, I said. Stop all funding to Whitmore Tech. Every line, every account, every project. Silence. Ms. Martinez, are you certain? Yes. May I ask? Chester, there's a woman named Maya Chun who has been spending my money, not ours mine, for 3 months. She has a back injury that only shows up when she's offered upgrades. She has a schedule that somehow always accommodates my husband's travel, and I just found out that I'm taking a bus. There was a quality in Chester's voice that I hadn't heard in years. I understand. 30 minutes, I said. Can you manage 30 minutes? The car will be at Gate B in 15. I'll have the pilot ready. I hung up, looked at my reflection one more time, and started walking. The private terminal was a different world. Quiet carpets, low lighting. A woman at the front desk who knew my name before I gave it, who'd already pulled up my file, and was directing me to the lounge where I could wait. I was through security in under 5 minutes. No one stopped me, and no one asked questions. The security system recognized my biometrics. The family had upgraded to facial recognition after grandmother's second kidnapping scare, and since then, I'd been able to move through any facility we owned like a ghost. At the lounge, I sat down, ordered coffee, and tried to figure out what I was feeling. It was nothing. That was the strange part. I was watching my marriage end from a high window, and the feeling I had was relief. 11 years ago, I'd met Nathan Whitmore at a charity dinner. He was young, ambitious, hungry in the way that self-made people are. I was the daughter of old money, which meant I'd been trained since birth to recognize the hungry ones and keep them at a distance. But Nathan was different. He had a plan. He talked about building something, not taking something. He talked about creating jobs, creating value, creating an empire that wasn't about inheritance, but about effort. I'd fallen for it. Or maybe I'd fallen for the idea of it. The idea that someone could love me for who I was, not for the accounts I'd inherited. Nathan's father had been a carpenter. His mother had been a nurse. He'd grown up in a house where the roof leaked in the winter, where cold was the constant weather of life. When he told me he wanted to build a company, he meant it the way some people mean they want to build a church. I'd invested, quietly, through Chester, through trusts, through structures that meant Nathan never had to know where the money came from. He thought he'd gotten loans. He thought he'd impressed venture capitalists. He had no idea that the venture capitalists were all just intermediaries for a single-family office in Los Angeles. He had no idea that I was the one who'd saved him 6 years ago, when the first round of financing fell through, and he was 5 days away from bankruptcy. I'd written the check. I'd insisted on anonymity, and I'd made sure he never saw the signature. It had been a gift I'd given out of love. I'd asked for nothing in return. Now I realized that was the problem. I taught him that I didn't need to be noticed. I taught him that my contributions could be invisible. I taught him that I would always show up, always support him, always stand in the background while he took all the credit. And somewhere along the way, he'd stopped seeing me entirely. The Gulfstream was beautiful. IT always was, and my grandmother had ordered it in a custom cream interior with dark wood accents, and she'd refused to compromise on the leather quality. It smelled like money, if money had a smell. I settled into my seat, buckled in, and watched the city get smaller through the window. My phone buzzed. Nathan. I let it ring. His message came through a moment later. Where did you go? Maya says you went to the bathroom and didn't come back. The bus leaves in 45 minutes. I typed back. I'm taking another route. He responded immediately. What route? Elena, you're not making sense. I was making perfect sense. I was making more sense than I'd made in 11 years, but I didn't want to explain that over text. I didn't want to explain that I'd been invisible for so long that I'd started to believe invisibility was my natural state. Instead, I put my phone on airplane mode and watched the clouds. The flight to Bali was long enough to think. I spent most of it going through old emails, Nathan's emails, the ones he'd sent to Maya about strategy sessions that lasted until midnight. The ones he'd sent to his assistant about private meetings with Maya that didn't show up on any public calendar. The ones he'd sent to Maya's assistant page about travel arrangements that included suite upgrades and separate flights and a whole itinerary that had nothing to do with business. I'd known for a while, not the details. I'd been avoiding the details, but I'd known. The way he looked at her, the way he made excuses for her, the way he'd let her take control of the company's most profitable relationships, it was obvious to anyone paying attention. I hadn't been paying attention. No, that wasn't true. I'd been paying attention. I'd just been telling myself it was nothing. Telling myself he was just being a good manager. Telling myself I was being paranoid. Telling myself I was being the kind of wife who made things harder instead of easier. And Maya had been right there, making things easy, laughing at his jokes, agreeing with his opinions. Never disagreeing, never pushing back, never asking him to explain why he'd spent a weekend in Chicago when he'd said he was at a conference. I'd done the opposite. I'd asked questions. I'd wanted to understand. I'd wanted a partnership, not a hierarchy. What I'd forgotten was that Nathan didn't want a partner. He wanted an audience. And Maya was an excellent audience. The private terminal in Bali was a quiet place, and I had a car waiting. Chester had arranged it, because Chester always arranged everything. The driver was a local woman named Indra, who spoke perfect English and didn't ask questions. Eden resort, ma'am? Yes, but I need to stop at the hotel first. Indra nodded and drove. The scenery was beautiful, or it would have been, if I'd been in a mood to appreciate it. I was not in a mood to appreciate anything. The Eden Resort was the most expensive hotel on the island. I knew because I'd looked at the rates when Nathan first announced the trip. He told the team it was a mid-range property. He told everyone he was negotiating a group rate. He was lying. I could prove it on my phone right now with the booking confirmation that had been sent to his private email. He was paying full price for a 5-star property, and he'd put me in a bus. The hotel lobby was opulent in the way that wealthy people think is understated. Marble floors, orchid arrangements, that smell of expensive incense, and even more expensive air conditioning. I walked to the front desk, gave my name, and watched the receptionist's face rearrange itself into a careful expression of professional neutrality. Ms. Martinez, we have you in a... She glanced at her screen. There's a note here that your room has been downgraded due to... I know. I'm sorry. I know about the downgrade. I need to see the room. She blinked. The room? I want to see it before I decide whether to stay. Ms. Martinez, you don't have a reservation for the main building. The booking was transferred to the... She looked uncomfortable. The staff quarters. The basement, you mean? Not basement, exactly. The lower level. It's used for overflow, or... My husband told the operations team I was being downgraded to a single occupancy room because of budget constraints. That's not true. It's for show. He's showing his team that he's willing to punish me for. I stopped. I just want to see the room. The receptionist hesitated. She was young, probably in her mid-20s, and she was clearly trying to figure out how this interaction ended without her getting in trouble. I'll need to call the manager. Fine. Call the manager. Maya met me at the elevator. She was wearing a different outfit now, lighter, maybe more comfortable for the climate, and she was standing with Nathan and another man I didn't recognize. Business partner? Investor? It didn't matter. What mattered was the way she positioned herself when she saw me. Half a step behind Nathan, one hand on his arm, the perfect image of a woman who wanted to make it clear that she was his priority. She sounded surprised. You made it. I made it. Did you have a good flight? I was so worried about you. The coach class can be so uncomfortable, and with a connection. I had a good flight. Nathan was staring at me. There was something on his face that I couldn't quite read. Suspicion, fear? Or maybe just confusion. The confusion of a man who'd expected his wife to follow the script and was now realizing she wasn't. Elena, what are you doing here? He asked. You're supposed to arrive tomorrow. I changed my plans. You changed your... He looked at Maya, then back at me. How did you get here? The bus is still on the road. I found another route. What does that mean? I flew. Flew. He was losing his footing. I could see it, the way his posture shifted, the way he started to look around for something to grab onto. What airline? Private. The word hung in the air. Private, Nathan repeated. You chartered a private flight. I own a private flight. You don't, he stopped. Something had occurred to him, something that made him go pale. Elena, the company doesn't have funds for a charter jet. If you charged that to the corporate card. I didn't. Then how? Let's not do this here. I looked at Maya. Maya, you should go check in. The front desk has you in a suite. I'll talk to my husband. Maya's face had gone tight at the edges. She was used to being in charge of these interactions. She was used to me being quiet, being accommodating, being the kind of wife who stepped aside without making a scene. Maybe I should stay, she said. If there's something going on between you two, I don't want. Maya. Nathan's voice was sharp. Go check in. She blinked. But... Now. She went. Nathan turned to me, and his eyes were cold. What's happening? I need to see the room they gave me. That's... That's what you want to talk about? The room? I want to see it. Elena, this is ridiculous. You're making a scene in front of. I'm not making a scene. I'm asking to see the room. We don't have time for this. He lowered his voice. The investor meeting is tonight, and Maya needs to prep, and I've got a whole list of people who need to. You've got a whole list of people, I repeated, and I'm not on it. Nathan stepped closer. What's gotten into you? What's gotten into me? I asked. Nathan, we've been married for 11 years. I've supported you through. I know what you've done. You don't. You don't know half of it, and that's the problem. I know you've been difficult, he said. I know you've been giving Maya a hard time, making comments about the back situation. The back situation. I laughed. It was not a cheerful laugh. Nathan, Maya doesn't have a back situation. She has a situation with wanting to take my place. He actually looked confused. She would never. Of course she would never. She's good at being never. She's good at being helpful and harmless and always right there when you need her. I paused. What I don't understand is why you're so willing to be lied to. Nathan stared at me. You don't believe me, I said. It's okay that I didn't expect you to, but I'm done pretending. I'm done being invisible. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to check into this hotel, whatever room they've got for me, and I'm going to make a decision about what happens next. And you're going to do whatever you were planning to do with Maya, and then we'll see where we are. He was quiet for a long moment. You're threatening me? I'm not threatening you. I'm telling you where I am. I don't understand what you want. I want you to see me. My voice cracked. Just slightly did I heard it. I want you to look at me, actually look at me, and see the person who's been standing next to you for the last 11 years. But I don't think you can do that anymore, and I don't think you've been able to do that for a long time. Nathan's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. We can talk about this later, he said finally, after the trip. Sure. I smiled. It was not a happy smile. After the trip. He didn't seem to notice the way I'd said it. He was already looking over my shoulder, scanning the lobby, probably trying to find Maya. Maybe trying to find a way out of the conversation. I'll see you at dinner, he said. We're eating at the beach at 7. It'll be good to have the team all together. I'll be there. He nodded, satisfied, and walked away. I watched him go. Watched him look for Maya. Watched the way his shoulders relaxed when he found her at the elevator. The way he moved toward her like she was the only person in the room. And I thought about all the years I'd spent trying to earn that look. All the years I'd spent shrinking myself, making myself smaller, making myself easier. It was over. I walked to the elevator, pressed the button for the lower level, and went to see the room that my husband had put me in. It was exactly what I'd expected. A windowless box with a single bed, cheap linens, and the unmistakable smell of mildew. The kind of room that existed in hotels for staff to sleep in when they were too tired to go home. The kind of room you'd never put a client in. The kind of room you'd never put your wife in unless you'd stop thinking of her as your wife. I stood in the doorway and let it sink in. He'd done this, he'd planned this. He created a situation where I would look unreasonable if I complained, where everyone would see me making a scene about a room, where I would be the bad guy for demanding something better. It was classic. IT was exactly the kind of operation he'd pulled on partners he wanted to squeeze out. He'd done it to Whitmore Tech's co-founder, Peter, back in year 3, put him in a position where he looked petty if he complained, and then used his frustration as evidence that he was difficult to work with. Peter had left with a fraction of what he should have gotten. Nathan was doing the same thing to me. I was supposed to be angry. I was supposed to feel trapped and humiliated and furious, and if I reacted the way he expected, he'd have all the proof he needed that I was impossible to deal with. But I wasn't angry. I was clarified. Clarified like a photograph, like a landscape that only came into focus when you were flying low enough to see the patterns. I saw him now. I saw the game. And I saw the way out. I pulled out my phone and dialed Chester. Ms. Martinez, is everything all right? Chester, I need you to do something for me. Anything. I need an action plan. Complete freeze. Every asset, every account, every line of credit connected to Whitmore Tech. Today. Chester was silent for a moment. The operational impact will be immediate and severe. I know. You'll be making a lot of enemies. I'm already making enemies. Mr. Whitmore will. Chester, I'm asking you as a friend, not as a lawyer. I sat down on the edge of the bed. It squeaked. I need to do this. I need to know I can do this. A pause. You're ending it. Yes. Then I'll handle the logistics. His voice was gentle, almost paternal. Take care of yourself, Ms. Martinez, and call me if anything changes. I hung up and stared at the wall. The room was quiet. The building was quiet. Somewhere upstairs, Maya was probably settling into her suite, ordering room service, putting on that little smile she used when she thought she'd won. She hadn't won. She'd just become the person who'd get to watch the whole thing burn. I stood up, walked out of the room, and went to find something to eat. I spent the afternoon in the hotel's executive lounge, which the front desk had no idea I had access to. That was the thing about being a shareholder in a global hospitality chain. Your privileges didn't require permission. They just required a name, a thumbprint, and the quiet competence of a staff that had been trained to recognize the people who owned the building they were standing in. I ordered coffee, opened my laptop, and started reviewing the files Chester had sent. There was a lot of them. Nathan's financials, Maya's expense reports, the trail of payments to consultants that had actually gone to a shell company Maya had set up in Nevada. The credit card statements showing the hotel rooms, the spa days, the flights to places where no business meetings had ever been scheduled. It was all there. I'd just never asked to see it before. Now I was asking. And what I was seeing made me realize that Maya wasn't just a parasite. She was a partner in crime. She'd been systematically siphoning money from Whitmore Tech for 2 years, and Nathan had either been oblivious or complicit. Given what I knew about Nathan's attention to detail, I was leaning toward oblivious. He'd been too busy being important to notice that his favorite employee was building her own little empire on his dime. But there was something else. Something that made me stop scrolling. Chester had flagged a series of transactions from 6 months ago, substantial cash withdrawals, just under the reporting threshold, all made from an account that had both Nathan's and Maya's signatures on it. The account name was something generic, W Investments, and the address was a post office box in the Cayman Islands. I pulled up the full transaction history. The deposits had been coming in for 18 months, always from Whitmore Tech accounts, always labeled as business development expenses. The money had flowed out just as consistently, to law firms, to real estate agents, to a property developer in Singapore. They were building something together, something separate from me, something they thought I'd never find out about. I closed the laptop, leaned back, and stared at the ceiling. The lounge was quiet, just me and the soft hum of air conditioning and the distant sound of waves. So that was the plan. Nathan had been slowly moving assets out of the company, into a structure that would protect them from whatever came next at a divorce, probably. Maybe even a bankruptcy filing designed to leave me with nothing while he and Maya sailed off into the sunset. It was clever. It was the kind of long game thinking that had made Nathan successful in business. He'd just forgotten who he was playing against. Dinner was at 7 on the beach. I'd changed into something simple, a black linen dress I'd thrown in my carry-on, not the expensive resort where I'd originally packed. I didn't need to impress anyone tonight, I needed to be comfortable. The restaurant was a series of wooden decks built out over the sand, with tiki torches and string lights and a cool breeze coming off the ocean. Long tables had been pushed together to seat the whole team, 23 people, including Nathan, Maya, and the 2 junior developers who'd been assigned to sit next to me on the bus. The bus that was still somewhere over the Pacific, presumably. I arrived a few minutes early. Most of the team was already there, drinks in hand, laughing at something Maya was saying at the head of the table. She changed into a silk slip dress that caught the firelight, and she was leaning into Nathan's shoulder in a way that made it impossible to miss their closeness. I chose the seat farthest from them, at the opposite end of the table, and sat down next to Paige, Maya's assistant, the one who'd been given first class along with her boss. Paige looked uncomfortable. She was a quiet girl, mid-20s, glasses, a nervous habit of twisting her ring. She'd never been anything but professional to me, which was more than I could say for most of the team. "Hi, Elena," she said, voice soft. "I didn't think you'd make it." "Neither did I." "Your flight must have been exhausting. The coach connection." "I flew private." Paige's eyes widened. I didn't know the company had a private jet. "The company doesn't. Either." She went very quiet after that. I ordered a glass of wine. The menu was expensive. Nathan had decided on a seafood spread, lobster and scallops, and some kind of local fish I couldn't pronounce. The kind of meal that cost thousands and left everyone feeling bloated and vaguely guilty. I waited. Nathan was making a speech at the other end of the table. Something about record earnings, about the synergy deal, about how Maya had saved the quarter that I'd heard it before. I'd heard variations of it for 11 years, always with the same rhetorical moves. Praise his team, diminish himself just enough to seem humble, then slide back into the spotlight. He was good at it. He'd always been good at it. But tonight, my focus wasn't on him. It was on the transaction that was about to happen. I'd asked Chester to block the corporate card at exactly 8 p.m. local time, which was right in the middle of dinner, when Nathan would be feeling expansive and generous. He tried to pay with a black card he'd been using for everything, and the transaction would fail. And then the fun would begin. I sipped my wine and waited. The speech went on for another 15 minutes. Toasts were made, glasses were refilled. Maya was given a standing ovation for something she'd done that I was sure she'd exaggerated. I didn't clap. I just watched. Nathan eventually sat down, flushed and smiling, and started eating. He didn't look at me, didn't acknowledge my existence. It was fine. I'd stopped caring. When the bill came, it was presented to Nathan with a kind of theatrical flourish that expensive restaurants reserve for important guests. "Your check, Mr. Whitmore," said the waiter, a young Balinese man with perfect posture and an even more perfect smile. Nathan took the leather-bound folder, glanced at the number inside, and shrugged. "Not bad for 23 people," he said loud enough for the table to hear. "We do this every year, and it's always worth it." He pulled out his black card. The waiter took it, vanished, and reappeared 3 minutes later with an expression that suggested he'd just been told his grandmother had died. "I'm sorry, Mr. Whitmore. The card has been declined." Nathan's face didn't change. "Must be a processing error. Try again." The waiter went away again. He came back. "Declined again, sir. I'm sorry. Do you have another form of payment?" Nathan's smile flickered. He pulled out another card, the gold one from the company account. "Try this." That one took longer to come back, but the result was the same. Declined. I watched his eyes dart around the table. Everyone was quiet now, watching the show. Paige was twisting her rings so hard her fingers must have hurt. Maya had stopped eating. "What's going on?" Maya asked, voice sharp. "I don't know. It's probably a banking issue. An outage or something." Nathan was fumbling for his phone, pulling up the app, trying to log in. I knew what he'd see. The app wouldn't load. The account would be frozen. Every line of credit, every card, every digital gateway to the money that was supposed to be his would be screaming, unauthorized. I sipped my wine. "There's something wrong with the app," Nathan said. His voice was too loud now. Over loud. The voice of a man who was starting to panic. "I'll make a call." He tried to dial. The call went to voicemail. He tried again. Same result. "Does anyone have cash?" he asked, and the question was so absurd that a few people laughed before they realized he was serious. "I've got $60, one of the developers said. I can scrape together 150, another offered. Nathan was pale now. We need 2,700. That's what the check is. The table went silent. Maya was whispering something in Nathan's ear. I could see her hand on his arm again, her lips moving, her eyes darting toward me. She was telling him that this was my fault. She was telling him to pressure me. She was telling him to get me to pay. He looked up, caught my gaze, and I saw the calculation in his eyes. Elena, he said, give me your card. No. I'll pay you back. You won't, but that's not the point. I set my wine glass down, leaned forward slightly, and spoke to the whole table. Nathan, I stopped payment on all the accounts this morning. Everything connected to me is frozen. Your black card, your gold card, your emergency corporate line, all of it. The silence was complete. You what? His voice cracked. Careful, I said. You're in public. You can't just... I did. You're not the signatory on those accounts. I am. And I decided this morning that I wasn't going to fund you anymore. It was the wrong thing to say in front of his team, that I knew that. But I was past caring about what his team thought of me. They'd spent the last 2 years treating me like a ghost. Now they were about to find out who'd been paying their salaries all along. Let me get this straight, said the head of operations, an older woman named Harriet who had a no-nonsense voice and the kind of face that didn't suffer fools. You're saying you're the one who's been funding the company? Yes. But Nathan always said the investors were. The investors were me, I said. Every last one of them. I used intermediaries, I used trusts, I used structures that kept my name off the papers because I wanted Nathan to feel like he'd done it himself, that I wanted him to feel like he'd built something. But it was always my money, every round, every bridge loan. Every time he thought he'd gotten lucky, it was me making sure he didn't fail. The table was frozen. Maya's face had gone gray. She was looking at Nathan like he just told her that the lottery ticket she'd been counting on was actually a receipt. You're lying, Maya said. You're just his wife. I'm a Martinez, I said. My grandmother started one of the largest private equity firms in the Western Hemisphere, and my father was CEO of a company you've definitely heard of. My family has been managing wealth since before Nathan's father finished high school. I smiled. I didn't tell him because I didn't want him to think of me as his meal ticket. But that's exactly what I was, and now I'm not. Nathan was shaking. You can't do this. It's our company. We built it together. You built it with my money. I stood up, and I'm tired of paying for things that aren't worth what I'm spending. I turned to the waiter, who was still standing nearby, trying very hard to disappear. I'll take care of the check. Add it to the room charges under my name, Martinez, Suite 331. I'll also need a separate bill for the drinks. The ones that were comped. I'll cover that too. The waiter nodded, grateful. Yes, Ms. Martinez. Also, I added, I'd like to reserve a private table for tomorrow night. For one, ocean view, if it's available. My room has a good view, but I'd like to see the water while I eat. Of course, Ms. Martinez. Nathan tried to get up. His chair scraped against the wood deck. Elena, we need to talk. Not tonight. You can't just, you're publicly. Do you have any idea what this looks like? I do, I'm the owner's wife, who's finally stopped pretending. I'm the mysterious investor who's finally stopped being mysterious. And you're the guy who's been stealing from his wife to buy his mistress a better life. I looked at Maya. That's what it is, isn't it? The account in the Caymans, the Singapore property. The withdrawals just under the reporting threshold. Maya went white. I've got the documentation, I said. I've got the signatures. I've got the trail. And I've got a legal team that's about to have a very busy month. Nathan was staring at me with something that looked almost like respect. Or fear. I couldn't tell the difference anymore. You've been watching, he said. Not watching. Waiting. For what? For you to show me who you were. I smiled, and it was the cold smile I'd learned from my grandmother, the one she used when she was about to take someone apart. Thank you for that. I left the table, walked to the front desk, and made a few calls. Chester answered on the first ring. The card block went through, I said. I saw the alerts. But I need a few more things, a private car to take me to the airport tomorrow morning, a reservation on a flight out. And I need you to start the paperwork for separating my assets from Whitmore Tech completely. All of them. All of them. I'll have the draft ready by morning. There was a pause. Ms. Martinez, Chester said carefully, there is one other thing. The hotel's general manager, a man named Robert Lang, has been trying to reach you. He says you've been flagged in their system as a VIP. The global office just sent an alert that a shareholder is on property. I know. He wants to offer you an upgrade. A presidential suite with a private pool and a butler. He's concerned about the room you were assigned. Tell him I appreciate that, but I won't be needing it. I'll be leaving tomorrow. Are you sure? There is no cost involved. I'm sure. But something stopped me. The image of Maya in that silk dress. The way she looked at me with that mix of contempt and confidence. The way she'd already started rebuilding her life on my money. Actually, I said, tell him I'll take the upgrade. But I want the room assigned to someone else. Who? Paige, the assistant. I wanted to have the presidential suite for the rest of the trip. And I wanted to know that the offer came from me. Chester was quiet for a moment. The young woman who's been complicit in Ms. Chen's schemes? She's been complicit in nothing. She's been a witness. And I think she's had a very uncomfortable few months trying to figure out how to stay out of Maya's way. I paused. I trust my instincts. Give her the suite. As you wish. The next morning, I woke up in my comfortable, windowless basement room, packed my bag, and walked up to the lobby. Paige was there. She looked like she hadn't slept. Ms. Martinez, she said, hurrying over. I don't know how to thank you. The room they gave me, the presidential suite, I've never even seen something like that. I don't know what to say. Say you'll go for a swim in the private pool, I said. And then say you'll keep an eye on things for me. Keep an eye on things? Maya, Nathan, the staff, the mood. I'm leaving today, but I'm not finished with them. And I'd like to have someone on the inside who can tell me what happens after I go. Paige swallowed. I can do that. Good. I handed her a business card. That's my personal line. Call me when something significant happens. You'll recognize it. She took the card like it was a bomb. I walked toward the exit, feeling lighter than I'd felt in years. The beach was bright, the sky was blue, and I could hear the sound of someone shouting behind me. Nathan. He was running across the lobby, still in his rumpled dinner clothes, his face red with exertion and rage. Elena, don't you walk away from me. I turned. I'm not walking away. I'm leaving. There's a difference. You can't leave me. We're married. Not for long. I'll fight you. I'll fight you on everything. You can try. I laughed. You know who my family's lawyers are, Nathan. You know what they've done to people who tried to take their money. I'm not trying to take your money. I just want you to listen to me. I've been listening for 11 years, that I've been patient, I've been understanding, that I've been everything you asked me to be. I stepped closer. And all you did was take more. Maya, the money, the lies. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? Nathan's face crumpled. For the first time, I saw something real in his eyes. Not calculation, not defensiveness, but something that looked almost like regret. I never wanted to hurt you, he said. Too late. I loved you. I still love you. Love is a verb, I said. And you don't do it anymore. So I'm done. I turned away from him and walked out into the sun, feeling the warmth on my skin and the weight lifting off my shoulders. There was a car waiting, a black sedan with tinted windows, driven by a man in a crisp uniform who didn't ask questions. Airport, ma'am? Airport. And after that, I paused. After that, I'll figure out what's next. The driver nodded and pulled away. Behind me, through the rear window, I could see Nathan still standing in the lobby, his hands hanging useless at his sides, his face slack with disbelief. It was over. But I knew, with the certainty that comes from years of watching people make mistakes, that it wasn't finished. The car ride to the airport was quiet. I watched the Balinese countryside scroll past, rice paddies, temples, the occasional scooter carrying a family of 4, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Clarity, the kind of clarity that comes when you stop trying to fit yourself into a shape that someone else designed. My phone buzzed. Paige. Ms. Martinez, something's happening. Maya just tried to check out, and the front desk said her card was declined. She's screaming at the manager. Nathan's trying to call someone. I think he's trying to reach you. Let him try, I said. I've blocked his number. What should I do? Stay out of the way. Watch. Record if you can. And call me if anything changes. I hung up and smiled. The chaos was spreading, and I wasn't even there to see it. The private terminal in Bali was a quiet sanctuary. I was shown to a lounge with air conditioning that actually worked, and coffee that didn't taste like it had been sitting in a pot for 3 hours. I just settled in when the door opened, and a familiar face appeared. Harriet, the head of operations, the one who'd called me out at dinner. Ms. Martinez, she said, and her voice was different now. Gone was the skepticism. In its place was something that looked almost like respect. I need to talk to you. Come in. She sat down across from me, folded her hands, and took a breath. I've been with Whitmore Tech for 9 years, but I've seen a lot. And I've seen things I didn't report because I was afraid of losing my job, but I think you need to know. Know what? Maya's been forging expense reports, not just padding them. She's been creating fake vendors, fake invoices, fake everything. She's been siphoning money into a separate account for over a year. And Nathan knew. He didn't just know. He helped her set it up. I nodded. I've seen the transactions. There's more to Nathan's been selling company assets without board approval, equipment, software licenses, intellectual property. He's been liquidating things and moving the money offshore. I have copies of the contracts. I kept them because I knew something was wrong, but I never knew who to tell. You're telling me now. You were the one who stood up to him. You were the one who showed everyone who was really running things. She leaned forward. I want to help. Whatever you need, I'll give it to you. I looked at her. She was in her late 50s, gray hair, sharp eyes, the kind of woman who'd spent decades in corporate environments and learned to survive by keeping her head down and her eyes open.